Hey guys, I'm Glitter Valkyrie, and welcome to my Barracks tour for 2022. I know it's now technically 2023, but I completed all of these projects in 2022, and the past couple of years I have done this every year with the units that I've built, so I thought it would be fun to do it this year as well. So I'm very sorry that it's very late. I have very poor time management skills. But we're going to do like we did last year and go by title. Unfortunately, we don't have any Shadows of Valentia this year because Atlas just does not want to come home, and I ran out of grails for Renea, so maybe next year. So with all that said, sit back and relax, and I hope that you enjoy my Barracks tour. Okay, so we are starting off the tour with one of my most wanted characters added to Fae. Nina was such a standout for me in Shadow Dragon. I just loved her design, and she was just the most tragic character that I felt so bad for, and I am just so glad that they gave her the beautiful art that she deserved in Fae. I always imagined in my head that she would be added as a 5-star tome for some reason, so I was actually pleasantly surprised when she was added as a 4-star healer because it made plus 10ing her a lot less painful. I know that it can be a bit of a detriment being a 4-star healer with no PRF, but there are some decent inheritables, and so I gave her my favorite, the Serpentine Staff. I think it's really, really good, and she puts in so much work. I know that builds for healers can be pretty limited with inheritance restrictions, but I ended up giving her Attack Speed Ideal, and one of my favorite C skills, Attack Speed Oath 4. It's super, super useful, and I love the warp effect combined with her ability to rescue her allies, and overall she's just an amazing powerhouse of a unit. And I do also have Razzle Dazzle in addition to Lull Speed Res, but really any way you build her, I feel like you can't go wrong. And so this is my Nina. I absolutely love her, and I have to say she was definitely worth the wait.
Yeah!
All right, so we are on to our only Yggdrasil character this year, and this is my Deirdre. So this was not an on-purpose plus 10, but she showed up as a 4-star special for me so many times. And she actually has some of my favorite art of all the Resplendents, so I'm really happy to have her. I know that there's been so much power creep throughout the years, but I actually still think that she can hold her own. I feel like dragon effectiveness should not be discounted. I don't know, I just think it's still pretty decent. She still can get rid of a lot of dragons in the game, and I just really enjoy using her. I gave her a pretty cookie cutter build with Fury and a Lull and a Menace just because I love menaces. And I actually never pulled a plus attack one, I just pulled plus speed, and so that's what I went with, and she actually does very, very well. So while I never planned for this to happen, I am really, really happy to have Deirdre in my barracks.
You need some rest.
Okay, next up we have Binding Blade, and this is my Bridal Larum. She was probably the best part of the bridal banner for me this year. I have a little bit of a story with Larum. I kind of made a mistake with the OG Larum in the past when she was on a Hall of Forms. I built up a really, really good one, and then I went back and forth on whether or not I should take her as a Forma, and then I kind of fell asleep and forgot to redeem the Forma, and so I never got her. And so when this one came around, I was determined to make the best Larum that I possibly could. And so I kept the weapon that she came with, partly for aesthetic reasons, just because it looks really good. And I also think it's a pretty decent weapon as well. I gave her Blue Dual Flying, even though I know it is a terrible idea because she is a dancer with no PRF, but I don't care because I wanted to bring her to Arena. I also gave her a Trace skill so that she could use it after dancing. It works super, super well. And I gave her a Joint Drive Res for some support as well. I probably haven't fully optimized her kit, but I love this Larum. I use her all the time in Wind Season, and I think she's a great choice for a merge project if you really want a dancing flyer.
Love is indestructible!
All right, we've made it to my favorite game, Fire Emblem 7, and this was a very unexpected but super welcome plus 10 for me. So I don't normally like fallen units all that much because they make me sad, but Ninian is one of my favorites from FE7, and I absolutely adore this alt. I think that her art is so gorgeous, and the voice work for her is some of the best in the entire game. And after her initial banner, Ninian just kept pity breaking me randomly when I pulled blue, and somehow I got her to +6. And then when she showed up on the Ascended banner that we had this past year, I said, why not try? And I got my last 4 copies in 20 pulls. And so here she is, and I really didn't change her too much because she really works right out of the box. I think that she is such an amazing support, and I actually feel like she's super underrated. When she dances, she inflicts guard, she debuffs the foe, she buffs the ally, and she also lets dragons move in extra space, and I feel like that can really trip people up in competitive modes if they don't think about it. Not that I really play that competitively, but, but I think it's really nice. And I would highly recommend this unit, like not necessarily as a +10 because she functions great unmerged, but I love Ninian and I am so happy to have her.
Stay away!
Next up, we have Ninian's brother. I was so thrilled when I saw Nils reveal as a Tempest Trials unit this year because he is free and I knew that he would be an instant +10. This has been a very rough year for me with Grails. I have very few left. But I cannot complain because this is the most adorable alt. While he is not as powerful as his sister, he is a refresher, and so I'm going to use him just for that alone. And for his build, I went with something that capitalized on his attack and his res with attack res unity and with Dragon Wall, even though I really feel like he's probably just as good with Wings of Mercy and it's a lot cheaper. And I also went with a Menace just because I love that family of skills, and I think it's really useful with the buffs for him and the debuffs for the enemy. And I think that if you're in need of a dancer, he is a great free-to-play option, and I am just so happy to have him.
Trick or treat!
Next, we are on to Sacred Stones, and sadly, this is my one and only unit this year because we didn't get any more La Rochelle alts, and all of my Ephraims have very low merges. And so my one and only Sacred Stones unit is regular Lyon, and this is a project that I wanted to do for years. For the vast majority of the THBs that we get, I don't promote the unit, a lot of the times because I don't like the character, but oftentimes because I also just don't want to use my feathers. But he was one where as soon as he was added, I immediately promoted him. He is my favorite villain in the entire series. I feel super bad for him, and I also think that his VA just does the most amazing work with him. I actually wanted to +10 him for a very long time, but then I got distracted with some other projects, but this year I fully committed, and I am so happy that I did. I think that his PRF is actually a little bit underrated. Maybe it's just me and my love for Raven Tomes, but I think it's really good. It's got built-in quick riposte, and it's got an attack res penalty, and I actually find it very useful. I understand that now that rearmed Ophelia is here, this is probably a little bit more lackluster, but that is a limited unit, and I think that this is really good, and it's free. And I think that he's actually a very balanced unit with really good defenses, and he's a pretty competent ranged tank if you give him something like Distant Defense 4 and a lull. Even though he is like a little bit niche, I do love him, and for me, he was definitely worth the grails.
Well, come then.
All right, we are on to the Tellius series, and I think that these are all technically Radiant Dawn characters, but it's fine, it's Tellius. And this is my stalker, Ashera. I never intended to +10 this unit. I mean, I like her, she is sparkly, and I appreciate that, but I never would have done this on purpose. But it just so happened that she shared with legendary Claude and some other characters that I was pulling for, and if she was on a focus, if there was any possibility that I could pull her, I did, multiple times. And so here we are with the plus 10. And I feel bad, I really don't have too much to say because I do kind of run her base kit, but she is extremely useful in Ashera season, and I think she works as is. She's a really powerful tome, and I imagine she's going to be even better whenever she gets a remix. And so while I wouldn't necessarily recommend going for a plus 10 unless you're like her #1 fan, I think she's very strong, and I am not mad about all those pity breaks.
Don't waste your energy.
Next up, we have my Forma Soth, and while I always wanted to build Soth, and I had a couple of merges on him from like pity breaks back when he could pity break us, I really hadn't built him properly. But when he showed up on a Hall of Forms, I knew that I had to build him. And while I would have preferred like a couple different skills than what I got, I was also trying to get skills from Micaiah, so this is what we got, and I actually think it works pretty well. I would have probably preferred attack speed, menace, and of course now we have Special Spiral 4 that was not out at the time, but overall it still works super, super well. I think he's overall a very strong unit that sometimes gets overlooked. I think that Pesh Katz is an amazing PRF. He is an excellent debuffer, but he buffs himself and he buffs his allies, and I think that people should take a look at him. My build is more of an offensive one with life and death and attacks, defense, menace, but I think that he also works amazing with close reversal builds. I've seen those too. And while I went for more of a player phase set, I have no regrets taking this Forma.
Let's go.
Okay, so this is my Summer Alencia, and this might be my favorite Tempest Trials unit of all time. She is my favorite Tellius character, and I will always want to build any Alencia that we get. And this version is so, so good. I cannot say enough good things about this unit. I think her art is amazing, and she is also like actually an amazing damage dealer as well. I think that her bow is probably one of the best inheritables, but you should never sacrifice her because all Alencias are friends and not fodder. But yeah, she has an amazing bow, and I tried to kind of capitalize on as much speed as I could for her because it really helps the conditions of her bow. So I went with attack speed catch because it's my favorite, and I went with a menace, and I gave her a Deadeye because it works very, very well on her. And it is a little bit unfortunate that we can't give her Flashing Blade for that Deadeye, but it still is something that procs pretty reliably. And I just love everything about this unit. So I would say if you are thinking about building Alencia and you're on the fence, I would say go for it, not just because she is Tellius' best girl, but because she is a super strong unit in her own right.
Let's go for a swim.
All right, we are moving on to Awakening, and we actually have a lot of Awakening characters today. It's been a very good year for us Awakening fans. So the first unit that we have is Valentine's Lissa, and I'm actually a very big fan of Lissa. I've been holding off on building her base version all this time because I really don't care for her base art. But as soon as I saw this Lissa, I knew that all of my girls were gone because she is like the perfect representation of what I think of Lissa to be. She's super, super adorable. And she's also fairly unique being an armored healer since we really just have her and Erica. And I think that you can build her a ton of different ways. She can run close counter, and she could also be a save unit too. But the build that I have for her is more utility with odd recovery, and I find her very, very useful. And I think that she's another unit who is very worthy of your grails if you're considering building her, and I just hope that whenever she gets a Resplendent that the art is just as good as this. Okay, next up we have Frederick, and this plus 10 was born out of a not great decision. So I was playing Arena several months back, and I was really struggling with score, and I think that like all my bonus units were unmerged, and I was staring at the bonus units, and I was like, you know what? I like Frederick. And so I merged him up, and for some reason, I thought that I could build him for speed. And honestly, I really wouldn't recommend doing that. Like, I do love Frederick, and I don't regret that I did it, but he is much better off with, like, Arcane Downfall and a different type of build. And while I do like his PRF being armor effective, I think that Arcane Downfall is probably better, and maybe one day I will give him a different build. And so while this wasn't one of my best decisions of all time, I really don't regret it because I do like Frederick.
And now.
Okay, our next unit is another unit that was on my bingo board for characters that I wanted added to Faye, and Yenfei did not disappoint. I think that he is one of the best GHB units with his PRF. It is just so good, and it really just does so many things. I mean, it gives him speed, it has built-in distant counter, and it has damage reduction too. And his speed stat is actually really good, so I just kind of tried to capitalize on that as much as I could with this build. Since his damage reduction with Carnage Amatsu is conditional based on his speed, and if he's solo, I kind of ran with it, and I gave him attack speed solo and route speed defense 4, and I gave him harsh command and Aether for scoring. And this unit puts in so much work. I use him every wind season in Arena, and I am just so happy that I did him justice with this amazing PRF.
I will not ask for forgiveness.
All right, next up is my legendary Lucina, and I cannot say enough good things about legendary best daughter. I adore this unit. She's one of my favorite legendaries, and I think that her remix just did wonders for her. She is such a great support as well as an offensive unit, and she has saved me so many times in Arena. My build for her isn't too exciting with Swift Sparrow 3 and Times Pulse, although the Times Pulse is really good for activating Deadeye. And the build is also not really optimized for scoring in Arena, but it works super well, and I'm sure that I'll give her more upgrades in the future. So overall, she is amazing utility, and she is best daughter, and I am so thankful to have her during win season.
I won't lose!
So last but not least for Awakening, this is my accidental +10 Spring Lucina, and this is also my argument that year 1 units can still be viable. So this Lucina really holds a special place in my heart. Her Spring banner was one of my favorite banners of all time, and the year that it dropped, I actually didn't get a single focus unit. But then when it reran the next year, I was trying to get Bunny Xander, and she just kept coming home. And then every year that the banner reran, she would come home again and again, way more than Xander. And this year I did my couple of pulls like I always do, and I ended up with a +6 Bunny Xander and a +10 Spring Lucina. And there's no way that I could be mad about it because she is best daughter, and I think this art is absolutely adorable. And with investment, like lots of investment, she can put in lots of work. Her BST is very year 1, but I've given her all the things that I could possibly give to inflate those stats. I went with Spooky Sensor, which is basically a Fury Tome, and Double Life and Death, and I guess I could probably give her more Dragon Flowers now that I think about it. But I also went with like a tried and true lull skill and Attack Res Menace, and it works really well. And using her also just brings me so much joy. And I think that that's what +10s should really be about. It should be a unit that just brings a smile to your face whenever you use them. And Bunny Lucina totally does that for me.
You will not stop my festivity!
Okay, so we are moving on to Fates, and my first unit is Orochi. And I have to say, I really don't have a lot of attachment to Birthright characters because of my conquest bias, but Orochi was definitely one of the standouts for me, and when she was added to Fae as a 4-star with a PRF, I knew that she had to be a merge project. And while I do love Orochi, I feel like I have to be honest and say that I really don't use her as much as I thought I would. Her PRF is nice with the boost to her like attack and res, and I think it has like panic smoke built in, but I do feel like it kind of pales in comparison to some other options. I did go with an enemy phase build for her with Mirror Stance and with Quick Riposte, and I think that she is a pretty decent mage tank. And I do feel bad because I do like this unit and I wouldn't say that I regret it, but I can't say that I would recommend building her unless you love her too. But overall, her art is amazing. I love Orochi, so overall I'm happy.
I've had enough.
All right, next up is my Sakura, and she is my favorite Hoshiden royal by far, probably my favorite birthright character overall, and I honestly did this just because I love Sakura. Her stats are very year one, and she does require a lot of investment to keep up, but I feel like with C-dual infantry, it does give her a nice stat boost, and she's also like weirdly tanky for some reason, so I gave her joint hone defense, and so she can give her allies a boost and maybe survive something if she's on a defense tile too. And the rest of her build is pretty cookie cutter with Serpentine Staff and Razzle Dazzle, and while there are probably some better choices if you want to build a 4-star healer, I love Sakura, so I do not regret this. Okay, so this is the result of the Green Dream and probably one of my best investments to date. I can't say enough good things about Ninjorin. This is definitely my favorite ninja unit. I love Corrin and I love Elise, and they are incredibly useful with their brave weapon and their gale force and the fact they're on a horse. They are just so good. I did keep a lot of their base kit with the exception of attack speed catch and ruptured sky, and they are useful in every single game mode. I use them all the time. I also love their art, and their dynamic as a duo is just so much fun, and I honestly cannot recommend them enough, and I am just so happy that this was the result of the Green Dream.
Tear 'em to shreds! Time to land the final blow!
So our next unit today is a project that has been years in the making. Elise is one of my favorite Fates characters of all time. She's best little sister, and she was one of the 5 stars that I was hoping to get on launch. Her art is some of my favorite in the entire game, and while I do love her resplendent art, there's just something about this Hako art that just captures her personality and her sparkliness so perfectly, and I just love it. And like I said, it took me a long time to complete this project. It actually took me over a year to get my first copy, and I think like another year before I was able to merge out like the terrible bane that I had for her. And then after that, she came home like pretty sporadically until, I don't remember which banner it was, but she showed up as a 4-star special 3 times in one banner, and it was just the craziest RNG experience I think I ever had. And so this year I had her at +9, and when she had her weekly rerun, I was finally able to get that copy pretty painlessly. And no matter how much power creep there is in this game, I will always love this unit. As far as like PRF staves go, I actually think hers is pretty decent. She inflicts gravity, and she gives a nice debuff, and it has built-in Wrathful too. And I was actually a little bit salty about that because I had given her Wrathful previously and had to give her Dazzling, which I do have on her even though I'm running a Trace currently, but because she is best little sister, it was worth it. I also gave her some of my favorite skills because I love her. I gave her attack speed catch and a Trace and a menace, plus a lot of dragon flowers and a floret. And so while there is always going to be power creep and new shiny healers, I will always use this unit because she is truly one of my favorites. Okay, so our last Fates unit is actually my most recent +10. And I had Legendary Corrin sitting at +9 for a super long time, and then this year with Otherworldly Bonds, I got my final copy. And I mostly did it because I didn't want to have to go through the pain of a legendary banner again and not getting her. And this, I think, turned out pretty well. While her base kit really works perfectly fine, I think that now that we have Dragon Distant Counter, it really frees up the A slot, which is really nice. I think she has a ton of great options for A skills. I do find that Mirror Stance works pretty well, and Dragon's Wrath 4 is an excellent skill on her, and whenever I get a spare floret, I'll probably give it to her for an attack boon, just so that it can help with the conditions even more. I would also like to replace her C skill in the future, but this really does work fine for now. And I use her all the time in Wind Season, and I think she's going to age really well, especially whenever she gets her remix.
There's no turning back.
Okay, we have made it to 3 houses, and we are starting with my first +10 of the year, Balthus. I was super excited when he was added as a 4-star since he was one of my favorite Ashen Wolves, and he's just a super fun character, and his art in Fae is so good. But with all that said, I will admit that when I first built him, I got the +10, and then I really didn't find a lot of use for him outside of being a stat stick for Arena, and it made me really sad. But then this summer we got the free Seahorse Axe, and it totally changed the way I played him. It is such a good weapon, and it really helps with his middling speed. And although I feel like he could probably use the Arcane Downfall pretty well, I am super happy with the build that I have for him. He's really tanky, and his Ignis is very scary with all that defense. And although he's not quite optimized for scoring either, he works as is, and I love him. I think that he is a great option if you're looking for a 4-star merge project, and I am so glad that I was able to make the most of this project with his new weapon.
Time to die, pal.
Okay, now on to my favorite 3 houses character tied with Claude. So Marianne is a character that is really near and dear to me. She is just a character that I really resonate with a lot, and I think that she has some of the best writing in 3 houses. And so every form of Marianne that we get is one that I'm going to want. And so this Brave form was no exception. I think that she is actually a super underrated unit, and I also feel like she kind of got overshadowed by the other CYL units that year. But I do feel like she has a great offensive presence, and her utility as like a not a dancer is incredibly helpful. Her Requiem dance has saved me so many times, and I truly used her in every mode of the game. I know that it's not exciting that I kind of run her base kit, but honestly, you really don't need to change it because it works so well. I do find that running Flashing Blade is actually really helpful for Requiem Dance, and she can pretty reliably refresh an ally with it. So while I think that a lot of people would say that she is the weakest of the CYL bunch that year, she is hands down my favorite, and I think that she is going to stand the test of time as a unit that can nuke and also refresh as well.
Forgive me.
Alright, so our next unit is Ferdinand von Eyre, and this actually happened after the tragic passing of Billy Kometz. He was just such a talented, amazing person, and I know that it's silly to do this, but I just wanted to do something, so I +10 Ferdinand. And I really don't regret it. He's a super fun character to use, and while I do find him useful with a Slaying Spear, I'm really hoping that he'll get a good PRF eventually. And for the rest of the build, I just kind of capitalized on his strengths with Attack Defense Catch and a Menace and a Lull. And overall, he works very well. I think that he is a very solid unit, and if you have a red armor to deal with, he can definitely take care of it.
Victory is assured!
Alright, so this is another one of my unintentional units on the tour today. I like Byleth, and his VA is one of my favorites. Zach Aguilar is super talented, but with that said, I would not have done this on purpose. It's actually kind of funny about how RNG works out, because in all the polls that I did during the Green Dream, I did not see a single copy of this guy. And then when he happened to share with Legendary Xander on a banner, I actually got fairly lucky with my Xander polls, but I kept pulling Byleth like one after the other, and there were just so many. And so here he is with his base kit, which I know is not exciting, but like Marianne, I just feel like he just sort of works. And I love this unit purely because he is a crunchy Edelgard delete button, and he's overall just an incredible nuke. So while this was not on purpose, I am very happy to have him.
I will protect you.
Okay, next up, we have the best 4-star in the game. This unit is just ridiculous. Summer Claude has the most insane PRF. He has Fallen Star, and he throws popsicles, so you really can't ask for more. But as for the build I went with for him, I gave him some gifts just because he deserves it, but he can truly function with minimal fodder very well. But I went with my favorite skill, Attack Speed Catch and Attack Speed Menace, and of course I gave him Lethality. And he's actually got Slaying in his weapon, so it makes Lethality work even better, and he is basically just a player phase delete button that I just love. So if you are thinking about building him and haven't yet, I cannot recommend him enough because he functions well unmerged and just gets better and better with investment.
Summer memories.
All right, we have made it to the last unit of the tour, and we are ending with my favorite Claude in the game. I think that you could argue that Summer might be the most powerful Claude, but this one still has to be my favorite. His art by Azutaro is some of the best in the entire game, and I just love seeing him wield Failnaught. There's just something so cool about it. And really the only upgrades that I made to his kit were giving him attack speed menace and Deadeye, and I think that he is an excellent user of that special. He has made Earth Season so much fun for me, and I know this unit will stand the test of time.
Leave. Now.
Okay guys, we made it to the end of the tour. I know that this has been a super long one, so if you made it this far, thank you so much. I did want to end the tour by showing some of the units from the previous years because I have given a few of them some upgrades, and I thought it would be just a good way to end things. So as always, thanks so much for watching, and have a wonderful day.